My name is Ethan. I never imagined I'd be sitting here, sharing something like this. But life has a way of pulling the rug out from under you when you least expect it. Up until a year ago, I thought I had everything: a loving wife, Lauren, who I believed I could trust with my life, 2 incredible kids, Nathan, 11, and Caleb, 8, and a comfortable home in a quiet suburb of Austin, Texas. My life wasn't glamorous, but it was stable. I'd worked hard to provide for my family, often putting aside my own dreams to make sure we had everything we needed. If someone had asked me then, I'd have said I was one of the lucky ones. Lauren and I met when I was 23, and she was 21. I had just started my first job after college, and she was finishing her degree. Lauren was confident, vibrant, and full of life. She was the kind of person who could light up a room just by walking into it, while I was quieter, more focused on my career. I admired her energy and her ability to connect with people. We got married a few years later, and for nearly 13 years, I thought we had built something solid: a life, a family, a future. But as I sit here now, I can see how blind I was to the cracks forming beneath the surface. Looking back, the signs were there. Small things I dismissed as unimportant: Lauren's phone always face down, her work trips becoming more frequent, the distant look in her eyes when I asked how her day had been. At the time, I didn't think much of it. I trusted her. But trust, as I'd soon learn, can be misplaced. The day everything started to unravel was a Saturday morning. I'd taken Nathan and Caleb out for breakfast, just the 3 of us. We did that occasionally, to give Lauren a chance to sleep in or have some time to herself. When we got home, she was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She looked up, gave me a warm smile, and asked, "How was breakfast?" It was such a normal moment, so mundane, that I didn't think anything of it. Until Nathan asked, "Mom, who was the man here earlier?" My heart skipped a beat. Lauren's expression barely changed, just a flicker, a slight twitch in her smile. "Oh, that?" she said, ruffling Nathan's hair. "It was just the mailman. He dropped off a package." Nathan tilted his head, unconvinced, but shrugged it off. That's when I felt it, the first crack. Something about her tone, the way she brushed off the question, didn't sit right with me. But I told myself I was being paranoid. That night, I couldn't stop replaying Nathan's words in my head: "Who was the man here earlier?" It echoed like a warning bell. Lauren's explanation seemed too casual. Too rehearsed. But I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I told myself I was imagining things. The next morning, I decided to test the waters. "So, what did the mailman bring yesterday?" I asked casually over breakfast. Lauren didn't even look up from her coffee. "Oh, just some work stuff. I ordered a new headset for the office." "Cool. Can I see it?" She hesitated for half a second, then smiled. "I left it at work. Figured I'd just take it straight there." That pause. That tiny moment of hesitation. It was enough to plant a seed of doubt that would only grow. A few days later, I came home early from work. Lauren thought I had a late meeting, but it was cancelled last minute. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed a car parked across the street, a sleek silver sedan I didn't recognize. At first, I thought it might belong to a neighbor. But as I walked up to the house, I had the oddest feeling I was being watched. "Hey, I'm home," I called out when I walked inside. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Lauren often took the boys to the park after school, so I didn't think much of it, until I heard a noise upstairs. A soft thud. I froze, my heart racing. "Lauren?" I called, louder this time. The sound of hurried footsteps echoed from the bedroom. By the time I reached the top of the stairs, I saw the door to our room half open. Lauren was inside, standing by the window, looking out. She turned quickly when I walked in, her face pale. "Ethan. You scared me," she said, clutching her chest dramatically. "What are you doing?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Just putting away laundry," she said, motioning toward a pile of clothes on the bed. But her voice was shaky, and her phone was sitting on the nightstand, its screen lit up with a text from a name I didn't recognize, Adam. I didn't say anything. Not then. Instead, I nodded and walked out of the room. But inside, my mind was spiraling. That night, after Lauren fell asleep, I grabbed her phone. I know it was wrong, a breach of trust, but I needed answers. Her phone was locked. I stared at the screen, realizing I didn't know her passcode anymore. When had that changed? We used to know each other's passwords. We used to share everything. I put the phone back and lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of everything I didn't know. The next morning, I called in sick to work. When Lauren left for her job, I made a decision I never thought I'd make. I followed her. She didn't go to work. Instead, she drove to a small cafe on the other side of town, Juniper and Oak, a trendy place I'd heard about but never visited. She parked in the lot and went inside. A few minutes later, a man joined her. He was tall, well-dressed, and carried himself with confidence. They hugged before sitting down at a table near the window. I stayed in my car, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Part of me wanted to storm in and demand answers. But I didn't. Instead, I pulled out my phone, snapped a picture of them, and drove away. I wasn't ready to confront her. Not yet. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about what I'd seen. Lauren, sitting there with that man, Adam. The ease in their body language. The hug. It wasn't innocent. I knew it wasn't. I stayed up late, waiting for Lauren to fall asleep, and then I started digging. Her laptop was on the kitchen counter, so I opened it. I knew her password, she'd never changed that one. What I found shattered any hope that I was overthinking things. There were emails between her and Adam. At first, they were friendly, casual. Then they turned flirty. And then, explicit. They talked about meeting at hotels, about the things they'd done together. One email, in particular, made my blood run cold. "Ethan doesn't suspect a thing. Just stick to the plan, and everything will work out." What plan? I slammed the laptop shut, my hands trembling. This wasn't just an affair. There was something more. Something darker. I spent the next day in a daze, trying to make sense of what I'd uncovered. I wanted to confront Lauren, but I knew I needed more information first. So I started paying closer attention, her phone, her routines, the way she avoided certain questions. And slowly, the cracks grew wider. The following weekend, I told Lauren I needed to work on the car. I suggested she take the boys to her sister's house for the day. She agreed without hesitation, which only made me more suspicious. Once she left, I went through her emails again. This time, I found more than just messages. There was a document attached to one of her emails titled Trust and Will Agreement. At first, I thought it was the paperwork we drafted years ago when Nathan was born. But when I opened it, I realized it wasn't ours. It was Lauren's. And the beneficiaries? Adam and the boys. I scanned the document, my stomach churning. It detailed her assets, things I thought were jointly ours, and how they'd transfer to Adam in the event of her death, or mine. The words blurred on the screen as I tried to process what I was seeing. Was she planning something? Was Adam in on it too? I tried to convince myself I was overreacting. But deep down, I knew I wasn't. I called my best friend, Ryan. Ryan and I had known each other since college. He was the kind of guy who could stay calm in almost any situation, but even he struggled to process what I told him. "Ethan, he said after a long silence, you need to get out of that house. Take the boys if you have to, but don't stay there. Not until you figure out what's going on. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. I'll figure it out, I said. That night, I acted like everything was fine. I kissed Lauren goodnight, tucked the boys in, and went to bed. But once everyone was asleep, I packed a bag. At 2 a.m., I slipped out of the house, taking only what I needed. I left a note on the kitchen counter that read, "We need to talk." Then I drove to Ryan's place, a small home about 30 minutes away. He'd already set up the guest room for me. The next morning, I went to the police. I brought the emails, the will, and everything else I'd found. At first, they seemed skeptical. Affairs weren't uncommon, and people often misinterpreted things. But when I mentioned the life insurance policies we'd taken out years ago, their demeanor shifted. Detective Morgan Hayes, a calm and methodical officer, was assigned to the case. Would you be willing to let us monitor her communications? Hayes asked. Yes, I said without hesitation. Do whatever you need to do. Over the next week, the police uncovered far more than I ever expected. They intercepted text messages between Lauren and Adam. Messages that weren't just about their affair, but about me. They joked about how clueless I was, how easy it would be to move forward once the plan was set. And then there was the message that changed everything: it has to look like an accident. No loose ends. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. This was a threat. The police advised me to stay with Ryan for the time being. They assured me they were monitoring Lauren closely, but I couldn't shake the feeling that every moment brought me closer to something I couldn't control. Lauren, meanwhile, was relentless. She called and texted constantly, swinging between desperation and anger. Ethan, please come home. Let's fix this for the boys. If you keep the boys from me, you'll regret it. That last one sent chills down my spine. Then, one afternoon, Detective Hayes called with an update. We've intercepted more messages, he said. It sounds like they're meeting at a storage unit tomorrow. We're planning to stake it out. What's in the storage unit? I asked, feeling my stomach drop. We're not sure yet, Hayes replied. But we'll find out. That night, I couldn't sleep. Ryan sat with me in the living room, watching the news on mute while I stared blankly at the coffee table. You're doing the right thing, he said finally. I hope so, I muttered. But deep down, I wasn't sure. The next day, Detective Hayes called me again. We found something, he said, his voice grave. You need to hear this. The police had searched the storage unit after Adam and Lauren left. Inside, they found a chilling collection of evidence. A map of my neighborhood, with my house circled in red ink. Photos of me, Lauren, and the boys, some taken from a distance, others up close. And then, there was a handwritten list, labeled Plan B. The list included, get him alone. Make it look accidental. Clean up everything. But the worst part? A box filled with gloves, duct tape, and a bottle of industrial-strength cleaning solution. This wasn't just speculation anymore. They were planning every detail. Do you still think I should stay put? I asked Hayes, my voice shaking. No, he said firmly. We're moving you and the boys tonight. Pack a bag. We'll take you somewhere safe. By midnight, Nathan, Caleb, and I were in a small hotel room on the outskirts of Austin. Plainclothes officers were stationed nearby, and Hayes assured me we were safe. Nathan, ever the curious one, asked, Dad, why are we staying in a hotel? I forced a smile. Just a little adventure, I said. He didn't seem convinced, but he nodded. Caleb, thankfully, was too young to question much. But as I lay in the unfamiliar bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I knew the adventure wasn't over. The next morning, Hayes arrived at the hotel with more updates. "We brought Lauren in for questioning," he said. "She's denying everything." "What does that mean?" I asked, my stomach churning. "She's claiming the storage unit isn't hers," Hayes explained. "Says she has no idea how the items got there and is pinning everything on Adam." I scoffed. "Of course she is." Hayes nodded. "The good news is, we have enough evidence to hold her. The messages, the surveillance, the storage unit, it all connects her to the plan. But she's not giving Adam up easily." "What do you need to bring him in?" "We're close," Hayes said. "We just need a little more." Later that day, I got a call from Lauren's lawyer. "Mr. Cooper," he began, "Lauren wants to resolve this amicably. She's willing to agree to joint custody if you drop any legal action against her." I laughed bitterly. "She plotted to kill me, and she thinks she can bargain?" "Lauren denies those allegations," the lawyer replied smoothly. "Then tell her to prove it in court," I snapped. "I'm filing for full custody." "I'll relay the message," he said before hanging up. That evening, I received a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Ethan?" It was Lauren. "What do you want?" I asked, keeping my voice cold. "Please, I need to talk to you," she said, her voice trembling. "This is all a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" I barked. "You and Adam plotted to kill me." "That's not a misunderstanding, Lauren." "Adam lied to me," she cried. "He set this all up, I didn't mean for any of this to happen." "Please, Ethan, you have to believe me." "I don't," I said flatly. "Talk to your lawyer." "Ethan, wait," I hung up. The following night, Hayes called again. "We've got Adam," he said. "Picked him up trying to leave town with cash and fake IDs. "What's he saying?" "Not much yet, but we're pressing him. If he folds, we'll have everything we need to charge Lauren." Relief washed over me, but it was fleeting. I wanted justice, but more than that, I wanted this nightmare to end. Adam cracked within hours. He confessed to everything, the affair, the plot, and the plan to stage an accident. According to him, Lauren was the mastermind. She said she hated him, Adam told the police. Said she felt trapped and wanted a way out. His words cut deep. But they were enough to secure Lauren's arrest. The police arrived at my house the next day to take her into custody. Seeing her led away in handcuffs was surreal. For a moment, I felt a pang of sadness. Not for her, but for what we'd lost. The woman I'd loved was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. The boys and I stayed at the hotel for a few more days while I worked with my lawyer to file for divorce and full custody. My lawyer assured me the evidence against Lauren would make my case strong. But I knew it wouldn't be easy. Lauren wasn't the type to give up without a fight. The next few days passed in a blur. Lauren's lawyer tried to paint her as a victim, claiming she'd been manipulated by Adam. But the evidence was overwhelming. Between Adam's confession, the emails, and the storage unit, the truth was undeniable. Lauren was charged with conspiracy to commit murder and held without bail. The weeks following Lauren's arrest were a mix of relief and chaos. Nathan and Caleb were starting to adjust to the new normal, but questions lingered in their minds, questions I wasn't ready to answer. "Why can't Mom come home?" Caleb asked one night as I tucked him in. I hesitated. "Mom made some mistakes, buddy. She needs time to figure things out. But I'm here, and we're going to be okay." "Promise?" he asked, clutching his stuffed animal. I smiled, brushing his hair back. "Promise." The custody hearing came sooner than I expected. Lauren's lawyer fought hard, trying to portray me as controlling and unfit to care for the boys on my own. But the evidence was undeniable. Adam's confession. The messages. The will. The map. By the end of the hearing, the judge made it clear, I was granted full custody. Lauren, pending the outcome of her trial, would be allowed supervised visitation, but nothing more. When the ruling was read, Lauren broke down in tears. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. The boys and I settled into a new rhythm. It wasn't easy at first, but small routines helped. Nathan took to helping with dinner, insisting he wanted to be the man of the house. Caleb, ever the optimist, made it his mission to keep us smiling, filling the house with his laughter and silly drawings. One evening, he brought me a picture he'd made at school. It was of the three of us, me, Nathan, and Caleb, standing in front of the house. Above us, he'd written, "Our family." "Do you like it?" he asked, beaming. "I love it, buddy," I said, feeling tears sting my eyes. "It's perfect." Life moved forward, slowly but surely. Lauren's trial was scheduled for later in the year, but I did my best to focus on the present. The boys and I spent more time together. Movie nights, soccer games, and pancake breakfasts became our new traditions. And then there was Rachel. I'd first met Rachel at Nathan and Caleb's soccer practice. She was there with her daughter, Chloe, who played on the same team. At first, our conversations were casual, small talk on the sidelines as we watched the kids play. But over time, I started to notice things about her. The way her laugh lit up a room. The kindness in her eyes. One day, after a particularly close game, she caught me as I was packing up the boys' gear. "Ethan," she said, hesitating for a moment. "Would you like to grab coffee sometime? Just us?" I froze, caught off guard. It had been so long since I'd thought about dating, and part of me wasn't sure if I was ready. But another part of me, the part that was tired of living in the past, knew I had to take a step forward. "I'd like that," I said, smiling. Rachel and I met at a small cafe downtown. We talked for hours, sharing stories about our kids, our careers, and the struggles of starting over after heartbreak. "I'll admit," she said with a soft laugh, stirring her coffee, "trusting people again hasn't been easy. But I guess you just take it one day at a time." "Yeah," I agreed. "That's what I'm trying to do too." Her honesty was refreshing, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could let my guard down. Over the next few months, Rachel became a steady presence in my life. We didn't rush things, but it was clear there was something special between us. Nathan and Caleb adored Chloe, and the four of them became fast friends. We spent weekends at the park, cheering at soccer games, and even planning small day trips together. One day, while hiking to a nearby waterfall, Caleb tugged on my sleeve. "Dad, take a picture of all of us." I handed Rachel my phone and knelt down with the kids. "All right, everyone, smile." She snapped a few photos, and when I looked at them later, something in me shifted. The image of all of us together, happy and laughing, didn't feel forced. It felt real. One evening, as I tucked Nathan into bed, he asked, "Dad, is Miss Rachel your girlfriend? What makes you think that?" I teased, trying to play it cool. He shrugged. "You smile a lot when she's around. And she's nice. I like her." "Me too," I admitted. "But we're just taking things slow. You okay with that?" Nathan nodded, grinning. "Yeah. I think it's good." As my relationship with Rachel grew, the shadow of Lauren's trial loomed in the background. Though I did my best to shield the boys from the details, they weren't completely unaware. Lauren wrote letters from jail, most of which I kept from them. The ones I did show were carefully chosen, full of apologies and promises to be better. But I couldn't ignore the darker ones, the ones where she blamed me for everything. One night, after a quiet dinner at home, Rachel stayed behind to help with the dishes. As we stood side by side at the sink, she glanced at me and said, "You're doing an amazing job, Ethan. The boys are lucky to have you." I felt a lump in my throat. "Thanks," I said softly. "I couldn't have done this without you." She smiled, then leaned in and kissed my cheek. It wasn't rushed or uncertain, it was steady, like everything she'd been to me since the day we met. The weeks leading up to Lauren's trial were tense. While life with the boys and Rachel had started to feel steady, the looming court date was a constant reminder of everything that had happened. On the morning of the trial, I dropped Nathan and Caleb off at school. Nathan hugged me a little longer than usual. "Good luck, Dad," he said quietly. I smiled, ruffling his hair. "Thanks, buddy. Everything's going to be okay." At the courthouse, I sat quietly as the prosecution laid out their case against Lauren. Seeing her there, confident one moment, tearful the next, stirred a strange mix of emotions. She didn't look like the woman I'd married. She looked like a stranger. The prosecution's case was airtight. Greg, her lover, her accomplice, testified in chilling detail. He admitted to their affair, their plans, and how they intended to stage my accidental death. She said she hated him, Greg told the court. Said she felt trapped and wanted a fresh start. Those words cut deep. But they were nothing compared to the evidence the prosecution presented, the messages. The map. The will. The box from the storage unit. Every detail painted a damning picture of premeditation. Lauren's defense tried to argue that Greg manipulated her, that she was vulnerable and made mistakes she deeply regretted. But the jury wasn't convinced. When the verdict came, it felt like the air was sucked out of the room. "Guilty," the foreman said. Lauren was sentenced to 15 years in prison for conspiracy to commit murder. As the judge read the sentence, Lauren turned to look at me. Her eyes were filled with something I couldn't quite place, anger, regret, or maybe even relief. I didn't look back. That evening, after the trial, Nathan asked me a question I'd been dreading. "Dad, is Mom okay?" I knelt down and looked him in the eyes. "Mom made some big mistakes," I said carefully. "But she's somewhere safe now, and she's going to get the help she needs." "Will we ever see her again?" he asked, his voice trembling. I hesitated. "Maybe one day," I said softly. "But for now, I'm here, and we're going to be okay." He nodded, wrapping his arms around me. "I love you, Dad," he whispered. "I love you too, buddy," I said, holding him close. In the weeks that followed, life began to settle. The boys and I returned to our routines, school drop-offs, soccer games, and movie nights. Rachel became an even bigger part of our lives. She didn't just support me, she supported the boys, helping them heal in ways I couldn't. One sunny Saturday, we all went to the park for a picnic. As the kids played tag in the grass, Rachel and I sat on a blanket, watching them. "This feels normal," I said, smiling. She nodded, resting her head on my shoulder. "It does. And normal is good." Months turned into a year, and while the scars of Lauren's betrayal would always be there, they didn't define us anymore. One evening, while packing up some old boxes, I stumbled across a photo from our wedding day. For a moment, I stared at it, remembering the dreams we'd had back then. But as I looked closer, I realized something: the man in that photo wasn't me anymore. I was stronger now. Wiser. I placed the photo back in the box and sealed it shut, ready to leave the past behind. On a warm summer evening, Rachel and I took the kids to the beach. As the sun set over the water, Nathan and Caleb ran ahead with Chloe, laughing and chasing the waves. Rachel turned to me, her eyes soft. "Do you ever think about starting over?" she asked. I smiled, wrapping my arm around her. "I think we already have." For the first time in years, I wasn't looking over my shoulder, waiting for something to go wrong. I was present. And for the first time, I felt truly free.